I would like to welcome everyone to the Illuminate Africa Youth Conference, hosted by the AfriGrowth Foundation. Wherever you're joining us from any parts of the globe, you're highly welcome. As we get into the meat of the matter, I would like to let us understand what is going on around our world at this particular time, and most especially as it relates to Africans. Africa has been predicted by highly reputable global organizations to hit the 2.5 billion population mark in 2050. Nigeria, which is the most populous Black nation in the world, will hit the 400 million population mark by the same year, 2050. It's also predicted that about half of that population will be youthful, which means they'll be between the ages of 18 to 25. In as much as a huge population benefits a society in diverse ways, it also presents a lot of challenges. And these challenges we're beginning to see even as COVID-19 ravages the entire globe right about now. The Illuminate Africa Youth Summit has been put together by the illustrious AfriGrowth Foundation that has been around for the past 14 years, championing youth development and community development initiatives to better the lives of African youths on a year-to-year basis. This conference has been put together at this particular time when the world is witnessing the ravaging coronavirus and its economic and social impacts on the population of Africa, especially the youthful population. I would like to welcome all our distinguished guests who are hereby present, and I would like to quickly hand over to the president of the AfriGrowth Foundation as she delivers her opening remarks and introduces our Honorable Minister of Youth and Sports for Nigeria, Honorable Minister Sunday Dare. Over to you, President Dayo Keshi.
I am most delighted to welcome you all, the Permanent Mission to ECOWAS, West Africa Civil Society Forum, West Africa Civil Society Institute, Nigerian Network of NGOs, All Africa Students Union, Chief Executive Officers of partner NGOs, friends of AfriGrowth Foundation, and of course, our very dear participants. You are most welcome to this special edition of the Illuminate Africa Youth Conference. I'm sure we are all doing well. We can to remain safe in this COVID-19 era. It has really been a challenging year, but I believe that we'll all emerge stronger and even more resolute after this pandemic. Africa's robust youth environment and increasing youth population makes her the most youthful populated continent in the world. According to the African Union, about 65% of the total population of Africa is currently between the ages of 18 and 35, and indeed making Africa the continent with the youngest population when compared to regions such as Europe and Africa and Asia. Africa's greatest asset lies in its youthful demography. As the youth provide a huge social, economic, and political capital required to drive socio-political and economic development. Indeed, Africa's growth and development cannot be realized if adequate investment is not made in youth. The theme of International Youth Day 2020 is Youth Engagement for Global Action, which seeks to demonstrate the importance of youth engagement at local, national, and global levels as a prerequisite for building credible institutions, systems, and processes. The emerging global and regional consensus on youth development clearly underscores the need for youth to be fully engaged and empowered to take their place as national assets. Currently, with 7 of the top 10 fastest growing economies in the world, Africa's growth is being driven by her youth, brimming with talent and energy. Indeed, the importance of youth to nation building could be likened to a car engine without which the vehicle cannot move. So also without her youth, a nation can never thrive. The role of youth in nation building is too relevant to be jettisoned. They serve as the backbone of a society. Since inception, and for over a decade of work in Africa, AfriGrowth Foundation has pursued a positive approach to youth development that applies a holistic strategy to the complex set of youth needs. Consequently, the foundation's youth-focused programs have been tailored and customized by building the capacity of young people towards intimidating paradigm shift to position youth as active agents of change. The foundation's programs utilize mentoring as the main vehicle of youth empowerment. AfriGrowth Foundation believes that investing in youth will culminate in placing them on a better pedestal to impact Africa and the world at large. In 2018, AfriGrowth Foundation took a giant stride in strengthening its approach to youth development as it convenes its 195 leaders converged with the intent of sensitizing and mobilizing their expertise in the areas that affect their growth and development in the nation. The core thrust of repositioning Nigeria Youth Summit was to entrench a culture of citizenship, servitude, moral value, and patriotism in 195 Nigerian youth leaders, especially as they were trained on how to channel their individual goals to impact positively in their immediate space of influence, be it their families, workplaces, societies, communities, via the development of self-learning practices. The major resolution at the end of the summit in 2018 was the unanimous decision to spread the tentacles of this enlightenment campaign anchored on changing the current mindset of youth and reposition them to take their place as national assets and engines of growth beyond Nigeria to other African countries. This resolution birthed the Illuminate Africa Youth Conference. AfriGrowth Foundation believes that through the main powerhouse driven by youth, leadership in the continent can be highly enhanced. Youth must understand that they are the source of light that can positively ensure that Africa illuminates and shines bright in all its ramifications. The Illuminate Africa Youth Conference will create a virtual opening and inclusive platform for Africa youth civil society organizations, stakeholders on youth development in the continent, and African youth to converge with intent to dialogue and address issues affecting youth participation and engagement in developing this continent. The maiden edition of with the theme instituting Pan-African youth engagement and inclusion in era will ex civil society organizations in a post-COVID-19 era, especially in the implementation of the African Youth Charter. The African Union Constitutive Act and the African Union Commission Strategic Plan 2004 to 2007 gave due priority to youth development and empowerment. Furthermore, it underscores the importance of youth participation and involvement in the development of the continent. To give substance to this commitment, the African Union developed policy framework in the form of the African Youth Charter, which was adopted by heads of African states at their summit in Banjul in July 2006 and was finally adopted for use in August 8, 2009. African Youth Charter provides government, youth, civil society, and international partners with a continental framework which underlines the rights, duties, and freedom of youth and strategic plans for youth empowerment. The adoption of the African Youth Charter in 2009 was followed by the Youth Decade Plan of Action 2009 to 2018, which was approved and endorsed by African ministers in charge of youth affairs, the African Union Executive Council and member states to accelerate the implementation of the Charter. Building on the achievements and learning from the Youth Decade Plan of Action, the African Plan of Action for Youth Empowerment 2019 to 2023, APAYE, is a 5-year continental framework which has been developed for the continued implementation of the African Youth Charter. Based on the global clarion call for youth engagement and inclusive development, I dare say that the African Youth Charter is indeed a unique instrument for this noble purpose, as it takes into consideration African values with respect to youth development. Currently, 39 African countries have ratified and adopted the African Youth Charter. It is imperative for African youth to effectively champion the post-ratification process by advocating for the implementation of the Charter. This will be achieved via the creation of partnership and synergy of diverse youth civil society organizations in Africa. Youth-focused civil society organizations have a unique role to play in the advocacy for the ratification and implementation of the African Youth Charter. Furthermore, monitoring of policies and action plans developed by African states in line with the African Youth Charter must be implemented. Civil society organizations can equally serve to bridge the engagement and communication gap between key stakeholders in government and the youths they serve. The Illuminate Africa Youth Conference is founded on the belief that a Pan-African approach is required to catalyze growth and development in Africa. African youths must understand and collaborate with their peers across the continent to remove barriers to trade, end conflict, and stimulate widespread positive change. Civil society organizations should play a role in facilitating this partnership and collaboration. AfriGrowth Foundation submits that an intercontinental growth can be achieved via improved partnership and synergy between diverse civil society organizations across the continent. The time is imminent for civil society organizations to enhance collaboration in the vanguard of building more sustainable systems which can effectively monitor policies and action plans set in place for youth empowerment. The current COVID-19 era has brought about changes ushering us into a time of increased use of the digital media. Presently, many African youths have made credible use of the digital space to develop their civic identities and express opinions in creative ways as much as they can. Currently, the digital space is one of the most effective media through which information can be shared, interaction improved, communication bridged, and engagement enhanced. Social networking sites have become very popular, especially among youths, have created new, exciting, and convenient platforms for young people to exchange information freely with little or no filters. Civil society organizations should explore ways of enlightening youth on how to utilize the digital space for more effective engagements. We must all, especially in the humanitarian and civil society sector, work together to enhance our youth and their capabilities. May I assert here that our investment today will amount to nothing tomorrow if we don't hand over the right generation of people in our youth. Our youth constitute not only the formidable demographic force, but also make up the next generation of parents, workers, and leaders. They can make or mar a nation based on what is programmed in them today. Feedback system, because if garnished with the best available resources, they give a positive outcome. But if otherwise, negative outcomes should be expected. Therefore, the rule of African youth is not participated in nation building. As for our dear youth participants, it is needless of me to stress that your future rests firmly in the palm of your hands. Youth should assert the position that youth are not problems to be solved, but problem solvers. African youth, you are the creative force, a royal diadem and dynamic source of innovation. I urge you all to open your minds as we are here to engage in a strategic discourse, ensuring that the African youths have the opportunity for meaningful engagement and effective participation in the development process. Be ready to assimilate the impact of value that our esteemed speakers will impact upon you today. I therefore invite you all to participate in this maiden edition of the Illuminate Africa Youth Conference. I sincerely applaud and appreciate our esteemed speakers and resource persons for making out time from their schedule to be a part of this important discourse. I equally use this opportunity to sincerely thank our partners, as with your support, the Foundation has been able to successfully convene this laudable and noble conference. We look forward to a rewarding and impactful event. May God bless us all in our efforts to institute a Pan-African youth engagement and inclusion in this post-COVID era. Again, I welcome you all as I hereby declare the first edition of the Illuminate Africa Youth Conference 2020 open. Thank you all, and God bless you.
Thank you, Madam, for that fantastic presentation and illuminating our minds concerning what this conference is all about, what to expect in detail. Right before we go into inviting our special guest to deliver the opening remarks, I would like to briefly share a story that I experienced some years ago, 2011 to be precise, when I was a guest at a business meeting in the city of Luxembourg. I got into Luxembourg as an African, and as I was about to leave my hotel room, I got the inclination to just take along with me my passport details and my invitation letter. As an African, I was wondering, why do I need to do this? But I took it and I took a walk. About 5 minutes later, or 5 to 10 minutes later, I was a bit tired. So I got to a bus station and was going to take a bus that was going to take me back to my hotel. At that bus station, there were a lot of white Europeans there. And I met a particular young lady who was an American. And she asked me where I was from. And I said I was from Nigeria. And she said she was from the United States. Immediately I said I was Nigerian. A lady standing right in front of me turned around and started screaming insults at me. She said she hated Africans. And she was very clear about the fact that some Africans had duped her sister of some money, and it actually hurt her to her bones. She continued insulting me. And that's when I remembered I had my invitation letter in my pocket. I pulled out the letter and showed it to her. And then she calmed down. And I used that opportunity to educate everybody at that bus station that not all Africans are what you think. You have a lot of creative Africans. You have industrious Africans. You have very exciting Africans ruling different sectors across the globe. I went back to my hotel room and thought about this situation clearly. And it occurred to me that the only reason why this lady decided to insult me at that bus station was because of what she thought about the brand Africa, in particular, the brand Nigeria, which happens to be the most populous Black country in the world. This conference, the Illuminate Africa Youth Conference, has been put together in line with the Africa Youth Charter. The Africa Youth Charter is a framework that was adopted by heads of government from across Africa in 2006 in Banjul to create a strategic implementation framework that can be domesticated by other nations towards the growth, towards the emancipation of the African youth. The first panel we're going to witness today, chaired by the chairman of the AfriGrowth Foundation, helps us to understand what the Africa Youth Charter is all about. Why was it created in the first place? Who are those involved in creating this document, and what did they have in mind? Has it been domesticated in other countries, in most African countries across the continent? To my understanding, about only 3 African countries have not signed up to the African Youth Charter, but the rest have. What have their results been so far? What has the experiences been? I believe that at the end of this panel, we'll get to understand at a deeper level what the Africa Youth Charter is all about and how its implementation has been going on across the continent since 2006 when it was signed up in Banjul. I will welcome right now the chairman of the AfriGrowth Foundation. But before I do that, I would welcome the permanent secretary representing the Honorable Minister of Youth and Sports to deliver the opening remarks from the Honorable Minister Sunday Dare. The permanent secretary, sir.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Noah. Your Excellencies, participants, ladies and gentlemen, do I accept that you can all hear me? Can I just see a wave of your hands if you can hear me? Very well, thank you very much. Let me start by thanking most immensely your very good self for inviting us to be part of this very, very laudable meeting, very important meeting. The ministry does not take this lightly in any form because we think that for us to be able to improve the lot of the Nigerian youth and by and large the African youth, we need a synergized approach to issues. So far, lots of things have been done in silos here and there, and oftentimes we're not able to galvanize these efforts to be able to produce the desired results. And avenues like this help us to reach out some more, coordinate some more, synergize some more, and see how we can indeed improve the lot of the African youth. I listened to Dr. Noel and I heard his experience. Unfortunately, that is an experience that many of our youth have had, and quite a number of us in some other forms, sometimes not directly through harassment, but you even find them at meetings that you have, global meetings that you attend, and in some cases, some try to look down on you, and when they realize the quality you're made of as an individual, then in some cases, they're able to get a change of mind. That matters to us a lot, and I want to thank Noel for not hitting back at that lady with the way she came at him, but rather trying to educate everyone that was at that meeting. That is actually what we should be doing, and I want to thank you for that. Having said that, I'm standing in this afternoon for my Honorable Minister, Mr. Sunday Dare, who is unavoidably absent from this meeting, but who has his heart in this meeting. And if you permit me, the Ministry of Youth and Sports Development is fully committed to youth development in Nigeria, because we believe strongly that the time for the youth is now. They are no longer the future, they are the today. We are dealing with a hashtag generation, and whether we like it or not, a lot of things at this point in time point us in that direction, and these young people must be given the requisite assistance, the requisite environment, the requisite wherewithal for them to be able to express themselves and to push forth their potentials. Because if you'll agree with me that we are seeing a very diversified class of young people like it has never been before. Earlier, the president was speaking and she alluded to what the COVID-19 has come along with and the move to the digital age. The truth of the matter is that it was just a time bomb that was waiting to explode. And what COVID-19 had done is to push this forward, because we now realize our very unlimited capabilities that can of things that can be done on the digital space. And whichever way we look at it, the African youth cannot be left behind, and as such we must key into it with everything that we have. The African Youth Charter is a well-envisioned document that we all must take very seriously. The ministry is taking a very close look at that, but I must also say here that we know that the ministry alone cannot enhance or pursue the full implementation of that in Nigeria, following domestications and all, but that we must all join hands to be able to do that. Having said that, in Nigeria at this moment, we all know that we've had some challenges, especially in the recent past with the EndSARS movement. We cannot just continue and leave it out as if nothing is happening. Well, it is a challenge that we have taken headlong, and we are really trusting that government engagement with the youth will help us to address the very genuine concerns of young Nigerians across the country that were brought forward with the EndSARS movement. And we're hoping that the desired change will come in as quickly as possible. Having said that, the ministry, in recognition of all this, has come up with a new engagement platform that we call the DEAL, D-E-E-L, where D stands for digital skills, because we understand whether we're dealing with the digital age, and then we're at a point where even tailoring today requires some form of digital skills. So we must be able to push that across the length and breadth of sectors in development. The second stands for the empowerment, youth empowerment. And to a large extent, we're moving not only from empowerment, but to investment, because investing in the youth goes beyond just empowerment, head knowledge, and taking them along and this and that. The question is, what are we able to empower them to be able to do for themselves and for the nation? We need to raise entrepreneurs out of them. Government alone cannot provide the needed employment for the mass population of our young people. To a large extent, depending on what statistics you're working with, we're talking of anywhere between 62 to 74% of the population being a youthful, being within that bracket. And that actually is a huge, huge, huge population that we have to deal with. So we're working on several fronts to see how we can further engage them, because an engaged youth is one of the street and is one that can project their potentialities for the benefit of the nation as a whole. It is in that line that we're able to gain approval for the establishment of the Nigerian Youth Investment Fund, amongst many others. And that is a ring-fenced fund that is expected to birth to help these young people birth their ideas. This is the first time we're having a funding in Nigeria that is not only targeted at small and micro businesses of these young people, but we also want to listen to their ideas. What are those things that still exist in their heads that we can actually bring to bear? Recently, Paystack, a Nigerian company, youth-owned company, was sold for $200 million. Now that is a huge one. And we think that there are many, many more Paystacks around in Nigeria, many, many more innovative opportunities by young Nigerians that could actually be brought to bear on national development and our economic growth. And we think that if we provide the environment for them to be able to bring this forth, that will really help the entire cause in the pursuit of this agenda. We also have a second E that stands for employability. We're trying hard to see how we can put together work experience programs for Nigerian youth. And the whole idea is to say that we bridge the gap from classroom to when they begin to take up jobs in various organizations. It is not enough to have the head knowledge. How about giving them an opportunity at practical knowledge? The ministry is working with some blue chip organizations across Nigeria to do that, and a number have already been taken on. This is not the platform for me to begin to delve deep into that, but what I'm doing at this moment is just to shed light on some of the steps we're taking to enhance youth inclusiveness and participation, not only in businesses and socioeconomic growth, but also leadership and good governance. And then we have the L, which stands for leadership. We believe very strongly that this is the time for us to create that environment that will allow for inclusion and full engagement of our youthful population, both in the area of governance, in various forms of leadership, as business leaders, name them. And we feel that this is the time, and for us to do that, we are creating opportunities for them to be able to engage, and then for us to also be able to listen to them and harness these various potentials coming from this youthful population. At this point, government must bend over backwards to accommodate these young people that are, especially the generation hashtag, whether we like it or not. They don't do things the way it was done in the past. This is a digital age. We must embrace the fact that things have changed. We must prepare the African youth for global competitiveness. We must prepare the African youth for them to be able to fit in wherever they find themselves across the globe. And this, to a large extent, is the entire, in a nutshell, is the objective of the African Charter on these young people. The youth agenda must be vigorously pursued for us to do that. Recently, we had the Day of the Girl Child, and where we featured and had some discussions around the challenges and potentials of the girl child. We looked at gender imbalances here and there, all addressing the issue around the youthful growth and the youthful population, the youthful integration of the youth into various arms of governance and what have you. I think it was a very, very enriching one, and one that I think with time we may need to revisit and see how the communiques that were drawn from that particular engagement helps us to move forward with that. So to a large extent, I want to once again, on behalf of my minister, thank the AfriGrowth Foundation for putting this together, for inviting us to be a part of this. And we are sincerely hoping that this wouldn't just be a once-off invite, but that one that will create a path for very, very constructive engagement with the ministry and by and large with the government of Nigeria as we push to improve the lot of the African youth. once again, permit me to convey the very warm regards of the Honorable Minister, Mr. Sunday Dari. I thank you all.
Thank you very much, dear PAMSEC. We welcome you immensely. The AfriGrowth Foundation welcomes you and thanks you for your participation and your inputs. Most of the things you have said definitely will go into the foundation's strategy and technical developments towards youth emancipation in Nigeria and in Africa. Thank you very much, PAMSEC. Warm regards to the Honorable Minister as well. Thank you very much. Thank you. The Africa Youth Charter provides governments across the continent, youth, civil society and international partners, framework cities and paves the way for the development of national programs and strategic plans for the empowerment. The key objective of the Youth Charter is to ensure the constructive involvement of youth in the development agenda of Africa and the effective participation in the debates and decision-making processes in the development of the continent. Youth issues in all development policies and programs. It provides a legal basis for ensuring youth presence and participation in government structures, forums at national, regional, and continental levels. The Charter gives an important guideline and places responsibility on member states for the empowerment of youth in key strategic areas. Some of these areas include education and skills development, poverty eradication, socioeconomic integration of youth, sustainable livelihoods and youth employment, health, peace and security, law, environment, sustainable development and protection of the environment. It's expected that the execution of these guidelines will not only provide the youth with necessary tools for livelihood, but also stem the flow of Africa's most important resource to other parts of the world. Now, the truth is, Africa has implementation, and that is why this conference has come to the fore at this particular time, at a critical moment in the development of our world. This panel, which I'm about to introduce, would give a deeper insight into why the Africa Youth Charter was created, why it was developed, and how the implementation framework has been going across the continent since its inception in 2006. Our distinguished panel members will throw more light on the implementation strategy of the Africa Youth Charter on a nation-to-nation basis. This panel will be chaired by the chairman of the AfriGrowth Foundation, Ambassador Joe Keshi. On this same panel, you would also have Mrs. Margaret Udo. And before I mention Mrs. Margaret Udo, Ambassador Joe Keshi has been involved deeply with the activities and the successes of this foundation for the past 10 years. Mrs. Margaret Udo, the Vice President of the West Africa Civil Society Forum. Welcome, madam. Mr. Leandre Banon, Program Officer, Capacity Development, West Africa Civil Society. You're welcome, Mr. Banon. Mr. Adewale A. Temilei, representing the Permanent Mission of Nigeria to the ECOWAS. You're welcome, Mr. Adewale. Farida Keita, Permanent Mission of Nigeria to the ECOWAS. You're welcome, Ms. Farida. Manuel Caxito, Director of the International Exchange Office, representing the Honorable Minister of Youth and Sports, Angola. You're welcome, Julio Caxito. Right about now, I would hand over to the chairman and the moderator of this panel, and the chairman of the AfriGrowth Foundation, Ambassador Joe Keshi. Ambassador, you have the floor, sir.
I was expressing my thanks and gratitude to the permanent secretary representing the minister, and it was really very reassuring to hear all what the ministry is doing in terms of trying to ensure the success of the African Youth, Youth Charter. And I also must thank the president and his team in AfriGrowth Foundation for the wonderful work that they are doing, and indeed for this conference. I think it's really timely given what we are experiencing, not only in this country, but all over the the continent. There is some bits of youth revolt, which we need to bear in mind and find a way to do the best we can to address the issues associated with the teeming army of youths all over the continent. Now, we are about to discuss a document that was put in place, I think, in 2009. There was a program that was launched, the first 10 decades of youth development. That has expired, and only the experts who are here with us will tell us whether it was successful or not. But I also do know that there's a 5-year plan, action plan for African directed on empowerment. And so this afternoon, our panel will engage on the journey so far, and I'm going to invite all the participants. We have just about 30 minutes to do this, beginning with Mrs. Margaret Aduda, Vice President, West Africa. I'd be grateful if you can tell us from your own perspective, from your own view, how far have we gone with, have countries gone with the implementation of the African Youth Charter? And indeed, I would also want other members of the panel, as we discuss this, let's also zero in on the role of civil society in ensuring the implementation of the document. I believe that Mr. Banon is with us. Mr. Banon, can you?
Yes, Ambassador. Good afternoon, everyone. So make right, and also related to the civil and political rights and these aspects, and when with what we saw recently in Liberia and what is currently going on in Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, and just to mention few of them. And when you have seen the excessive forces or excessive, forces that our police have been using on youth who are on the street demanding for a better government and want a job, who are channeling their aspirations. And there are various reasons for that, for us not seeing, much tangible result in terms of the implementation. The first one, should I go ahead? Okay. So the first one is related to the lack of, should I say it, accountability mechanism from the African Union, Commission itself. And looking at, for example, set up a mechanism to ensure, for example, there is we receive updates at national level from every country on annual basis, for example, on implementation of the framework. So we all know that nothing gets done when there is no accountability. And but we must also commend the fact that we have few countries, apart from ratifying the charter, they have taken initiative at country level, and some of them, maybe Ghana, for example, they even have a national youth policy here in Ghana that is in place. You also have Mali, for example, that even have set up a national youth council to channel the aspirations and demand of youth. Even though that platform has been so politicalized, the politicians want to hijack that platform. So at the end of the day, it's not playing its roles. And the other element of, for not working effectively, we also talked about, even the process of involving the youth itself, and especially looking at the setup of institutions. In most of our country, we have this kind of, we call it youth ministry, or ministry in charge of youth affairs in various countries. But you will see that the person even in charge of it is is no longer a young person, is older than.
Let me bring in Mr. Adewale from ECOWAS. Mr. Adewale, I'm sure that you heard all what Mr. Banon said, particularly the lack of accountability at the AU level, the fact that there's been no significant progress on the Youth Charter. There are few limited, actions at the state level, national level, But at the end of the day, I think I liked this last comment, which was the fact that there's the need for significant investment in youth. He also talked of political will. So, Mr. Adewa.
Yes, sir. I'm with you, Your Excellency.
Yes, so I would like to where do we go from here? If after more than many years now, we have such a beautiful action. In your view?
Okay, can everyone hear me now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
5 minutes.
All right, my name once again is Adewale Adeyemi, and I'm sitting in for Ambassador Musa Sani Nuhu, the permanent representative of Nigeria to ECOWAS. He, who, due to exigencies of duty, could not make it into this meeting. I also want to appreciate the conveners of this meeting for this very lofty idea of bringing relevant stakeholders together to seek a way forward on how the youths can remain relevant and be a part of the developmental process for Africa as a whole, as a continent. And also, before I go on, I will have to respectfully pay respect to Ambassador Joe Keshi. People like us only get to read and hear about him after he had left. We joined the ministry after he had left so many years. So it's a privilege listening to him right now and seeing him and being a part of the meeting that he also is. Your Excellency, I appreciate you so much. So I haven't said that, and building on the earlier comments of the participant that spoke earlier, I think so many things. There is no doubt about the fact that the youth of any continent or of any region is an integral part of that developmental process, and it is not in doubt also that the African Union as an organization has come to that to that understanding. As it is, African Union has a lot of instruments, a lot of documents that buttresses the fact that they already come to the understanding of the integral part or integral role that the youths have to play in the developmental process of Africa. But even despite these instruments, despite the several documents that we have that are supposed to chart the course for how the youth will be a part of the development process of Africa, things are still not the way we are supposed to. They are supposed to be. We have a lot, like the speaker who spoke earlier alluded. There are a lot of recent happenings that goes to show that the youth are not yet integrated into the system. In most of the African countries, the youths are still very, very isolated from the system of process of governance, the process that leads to development, and the process that leads to entrenching them in bringing up, expressing their potentials in their society, in their various societies. So, like Ambassador asked now, what are we supposed to be doing? Now, when we look at the charter that we are considering today, the African Youth Charter. Now, we all know, as we all know, and as Mrs. Dio also made mention in opening remarks, the Articles 26, 27, and 28 of that charter, actually stipulates the implementation process of the charter, and it places it in the hands of three major players. The first being the youths themselves, the second being the state parties to the charter, and the third being the sub-regional and regional organizations. So what it means is that in integrating or in making the youth relevant in the process of development in Africa, the youths have a role to play. the state parties to the AYC, the African Youth Charter, has a role to play, and also the regional organizations such as ECOWAS and other ones, SADC, COMSA, and as many that have roles to play at their own level to ensure that these the things that are spelled out in the provisions of the African Youth Charter is well implemented. So since I'm coming from the ECOWAS perspective, so I'm going to, if you just permit me, I'll just mention one or two roles or responsibilities that the charter itself spelled out for regional organizations to do as part of their contribution to the implementation of the charter. And one of it says that they are supposed to collaborate with governmental and non-governmental institutions as well as developmental partners to identify best practices on youth policy, formulation and implementation, and encouragement, and encourage the adaptation of principles and experiences among state parties. It also stipulates that these regional bodies must invite state parties to include youth representatives as part of their delegation to ordinary sessions of the African Union. There's also the one that says that they must institute measures to create awareness of their activities and make information on its activities. Now,
thank you very much. And given what you have said, and I like some of the observations you have made. The question I asked, which I had asked before, is, the African Charter contains a lot of beautiful things that can be done to help youths, all over the continent. The last speaker talked of inclusion in investment in youth and the role of the private sector, the role of government, and so on. But I'm still concerned about how do we empower the youth? What is the best way? I'm looking for that answer that says to you, this is what you need to do, government. Say to the government, this is what you need to do, and it will work effectively to bring in the youth, either as a form of inclusion or as a form of empowerment. What is exactly is missing in all this conversation?
I think what is missing is the foundation of the youth. First of all, let me go a little into what I do. We carry out, my organization, we close holistic development gaps in children and individuals, particularly the children and youth. If you do not prepare their background well and equip them properly, they cannot come out to be relevant and do whatever we want to do. Somebody talked about job. We don't have jobs. So the education system has to be reconsidered to be what we call talent-based education, where children are discovered. Our children must be discovered to be able to put them in the right track of their life. So the education should be inclusive and holistic. There should be a training of the teachers on how to bring out the propensities in children. And that's what we do. So that you don't waste time to teach these children what they are not good at. So if we have the proper holistic and inclusive education, which is not only the education of the school and the teacher, education that incorporates everybody that has contact with that child. You cannot bring up children in the school to go back to meet illiterate parents at home. So that education will not be functional. So when we talk about functional education, the project starts from the beginning. Whatever is taught to children is what we call abstract. Let this abstract be turned into what we call reality, so that the child understands his relationship with the environment, in health, in everything, so that whatever a child does will end up, how can my life be improved with this knowledge? And how can it help me to put food on the table? So we bring up entrepreneurs. We bring up children that can think. Subjects like critical thinking, creative thinking should be introduced into the system. So if we don't do these things, we have not started. So that the foundation matters, inclusive and holistic education.
Thank you very much, Madam. I think you've actually nailed it, and I can say I agree a lot with you. Let me just share this with you all. Growing up as a young man or as a youth, my generation, we only had one message from our parents. Our parents were not rich. Many of them were neither here or there, but they did one thing. They kept telling my generation that we only have one thing to give you, and that is education. And today, the generation that is aging, my generation that is aging, the only empowerment we had in life was education. And that education opened up the doors for us in so many ways. It was that education that led us on the journey that many of us took, different journeys to what we became at the end of the day and to who we are today. I still think, in my view, that as Margaret has said, one of the best ways, if not the best way, to really empower the youth and set them on a trajectory that is almost irreversible, as we experience, is education. And that education must cut across board. Just don't leave, nobody should be left behind. My generation, we had trade schools. If you cannot make it up to the university, or you cannot make it to the polytechnic as it was in those days, you went to trade school where you were trained as a craft person, and a lot of them actually turned out to be, very successful in life. But that said, I think everybody was right in one or two things. Number one, government must invest in education, because in investing in education, you are also investing in youth. Number two, and Margaret made it very clear too, parents have a role to play in this. And number three is the private sector. But before you talk about the private sector, government also has a responsibility of ensuring that you create the environment that would allow the private sector to grow and expand. As long as the private sector expands, there will be a lot of jobs for the younger ones, and that will definitely take care of quote unquote youth empowerment, in the sense that getting a job, working diligently, growing up the ladder is part of the empowerment you receive from expanding the economy. But I know that quite a number of people refer to inclusion. Very often, people talk of politics and so on. I also agree that you must open up the political space. But look, here's the deal for me. I think in opening up the political space, youth should be realistic enough to ask the simple question: where do I start from? The first place you start from is getting involved, getting engaged. Make sure you become part of the process. Don't just get up one day and say you are going to contest for the presidency when you have not even contested for local government and proved your worth. So there are so many places. Even becoming a member, being active in civil society organizations as we are doing today is part of what youth can do to build up themselves, to develop themselves, and to grow up. After all, I'm sure many of you remember that if you look at the life of President Obama, he actually was a youth organizer. He was a community organizer for crying out loud, until he began to grow in that led eventually to the presidency. So there are a lot of routes that the youth can follow in their growth and development. But as I said, This is not a conversation that we can completely, take care of today because another panel is set to go. But I think that we've had a fantastic and interesting conversation, and we should keep is the key to success in life. And for us to empower the youth, government must create that environment that allows youth to be very educated across the board. Whether in technology, in any field at all, we need to focus on ensuring that the investment on youth should be on education. Whatever else you want to do, let's begin with education. And so I want to thank each and every one of you. And I invite the MC to take us to the next panel. I think that's the second panel, effective use of the digital space. And this will zero into what Madam Margaret is discussing with me. Thank you very much all, and it's been a fantastic conversation.
Thank all the panelists who contributed to making it a success. Like I've always said, Africa has never lacked policymakers. Africa has never lacked policy documents. Africa has always lacked leaders who would implement these policies from the depths of their heart. Africa has lacked leaders who mean what they say and take up policies that they know would affect the generality of the public and execute on them in spite of whose axe is God. I thank again Ambassador Joe Keshi, the chairman of the panel, and everybody else who has participated in the panel. And I'll just go on to introduce the next panel, which has to deal with the effective use of digital space for youth engagement, social media, interactive and informative web platforms. Some weeks ago, I woke up to the news of a coming together of some youths to protest something regarding SARS, which is the Special Anti-Robbery Squad of the police force in Nigeria. And I'll use the Nigerian example in this case to introduce this panel. SARS, as we know it, has been involved in a lot of infractions concerning the Nigerian people. There have been a lot of deaths, there have been a lot of maimings, a lot of wrongdoings from that group of the police force. And initially, a group of youths decided to hit the streets and make their voices heard. But as they did that, they mobilized a huge number of youths across the country that reverberated across the continent. I started receiving reports from my friends in other African countries talking about what is happening in Nigeria and how it's affecting their own livelihood in their own countries, and how their police force in their countries have been reacting to what is happening in Nigeria. Quite unfortunately, currently being denied by the federal government of Nigeria, but that investigation is still ongoing. A number of youths were killed at the Lekki toll gate, and there has been claims and counterclaims on how many people died, or if anybody died. That issue is still being discussed as we speak. But that movement was successful because of the power of social media. Youths showed that for the very first time, they could agglomerate, they could come together, pull resources together to get fantastic things done. They put resources together, they put money together, they called themselves together, and they poured out into the streets to express themselves critically concerning issues that they felt were pertinent to their growth and development going forward. African youths are not stupid. They know what is happening across the globe. They want a better life. They want to live better. And social media has bridged the divide. African youths now easily see what it's like to live a good life outside of Africa. So that they want the same thing in Africa, and they are demanding those changes right now. So in this panel, we're going to be discussing the effective use of digital media. Yes, digital media has its disadvantages, but it also has it has immense advantages. And I welcome the panelists we're going to be having today to discuss this critical issue. Mr. Gbenga Shoshan is the Executive Director of Paradigm Initiative. And I've heard a lot about him before today, and it's a pleasure meeting him on this platform. Hello, Gbenga. Nice meeting you. I will give you the floor immediately to first of all tell us what you've been doing, leveraging on digital media, to impact the lives of youth across not just Nigeria, but in Africa as a whole. So I'll just let you come in now. So you would give us one or two ideas about how your organization has leveraged this platform going forward. Then we'll begin to look at it from a holistic perspective. Benga, over to you.
All right, thank you. So let me start with the story of Famous. Famous, like many young people in Nigeria, went through primary school. He was lucky. He went through secondary school, and that was where the luck stopped. His parents told him bluntly, you live in Ajegunle. Here, your younger brother, your younger sister, other family members, everybody needs to get at least primary school and secondary school education. And so at this point, OYO, you are on your own. But Famous had heard his friends talk about a program that we started at Paradigm Initiative in 2007 called the LIFE program. LIFE is acronym for Life Skills, ICT Skills, Financial Readiness, and Entrepreneurship Skills. He came to that program. At the time, it was a 4-week program. It is now a 10-week intensive program. Famous finished the program, he paid attention, he excelled, literally. And so when the UK Deputy High Commission, the Trade and Investment Unit asked us, I'd done some work with them, and then they asked us to introduce a few young people they could, interview for an internship. Famous went there, and the one thing that made Xavier get that job was Excel, Microsoft Excel. Because he knew spreadsheets, he knew how to take complex documents, put them in a spreadsheet. Instead of taking a calculator, he knew how to drag and get the answer before somebody will punch 10 things. But the story didn't stop there. While he was there, Famous found out that there was an entry clearance officer position at the UK High Commission in Abuja. When he asked me, my advice was, maybe you shouldn't apply for it because he didn't have a university degree. But of course, we had taught them to be bold, so he applied. To cut the long story short, even though Famous would tell you that, even if he didn't get a job, it was fine. They sent a car to his house to pick him up from Ajegunle, took him to the airport. He flew in an airplane for the first time in his life because he knew how to use a computer, because he learned how to use Excel. He got a job, to cut the long story short. And guess what? After a few months, Famous resigned. We were all confused. What's going on here? But he knew what he wanted. He saved enough money. I think it was 80,000 naira or something it was paid. This was 2007, 2008. So you can imagine what 80,000 naira was. He resigned, went to school. As I speak to you, Famous is not just a graduate of, medical biochemistry from, he's not just a graduate. He now works for one of the top 4 professional services firms in the world here in Lagos, where I am today, and he's won innovation awards for the last 4 years consecutively. Why have I told this story? There are millions of Famouses across Nigeria. These Famouses are just looking for an opportunity to get connected to digital opportunities. It hurts. It is painful when I see Desmond Elliott, Lai Mohammed, the National Security Advisor, and other government officials focus on the negatives of technology. Of course, any platform can be used to spread anything. Radio has been used before, TV has been used, the internet is being used. Anything that is a medium of expression will be used to express the sentiment of society. If you see a lot of hate in it, it is not the platform, it is the society. So the millions of Famouses, there are only a few that we can reach through our own programs. And we're glad, we now have, centers in Aba, in Kano, in Lagos, and we work in 15 schools across Nigeria. And now we have a digital component of it. But the irony is that the digital component of our program is only accessible to those who are connected. There are millions who do not have devices, that when you buy devices for them, their parents will be the one to use the devices. And it makes sense. If I'm a 17-year-old who gets a free mobile phone from a program run by an NGO, and my father needs the phone to be able to run his business, to make more money so that we can eat, it can make a good argument to take the phone away from me. But that's one side of the work that we do. We must empower our young people to not just get technology training, but also for them to get exposure to what is possible. The second side of our work is in terms of policy, and that's why I feel very pained when I see that many African countries promote a climate of fear instead of a climate of innovation. A president of one of the African countries, and I shared a panel at the World Economic Forum once, and when everybody was talking about technology and things like that, he leaned over and asked me a question, and he said, oh, by the way, all of you young people from Africa, you're always shouting and talking about tech this, tech that, we protested, we questioned government, but none of you is like Mike Zuckerberg. None of you is like Bill Gates. Where are the Mark Zuckerbergs of Africa? And as a polite African man, a young African man that I am, I also leaned over and said politely to Mr. President that, sir, the Bill Gates, potential Bill Gates and potential Mark Zuckerbergs in your country are all in jail because made comments on social media, they expressed their political opinion and you jailed them, and nobody becomes Bill Gates in a kind of environment that you have created in your country. And unfortunately, this is where Africa needs to make a decision. Are we going to consider where, we've got the likes of our colleagues who are very comfortable with holding on to power and they see everything, including social media, as opposition, and they're so disconnected from the reality of their citizens that it is only what their special advisors tell them that they believe? I mean, how on earth does a president in a country where young people have been shot at, even if none of them died, how do you make a statement to your citizens and say that you will not say anything about that incident until you have been briefed? That is the kind of disconnection that we see. But the good news with technology is that technology has done three things to young Africans. Number one, technology has exposed them to what is possible. Gone are the days when you could say, I build good roads. When you build good roads, that is not the only thing democracy and governance is about. Governance is about the infrastructure above the ground, which includes intellectual capital. What is the average young person in our schools becoming today? I'm an employer of labor, and I can tell you how sad it is that many times when we release calls for application, there are so many people who apply that are literally unemployable. That is what exposure will make you do. It will make you make more demands. It's the reason why you have a lot of youth-led organizations, one or two of them also on this call, who are leading change in their own way because they've seen what it means like to do this in other places. That's number one, exposure. Number two is knowledge. In spite, I should know, I mean, I've been in the ICT sector in Nigeria and I've had, my chances to work with one or two governments for a while. And I can tell that in spite of the inability of government to understand and provide adequate policy environments for young people, we have the likes of Paystack, which was just in the news as having been sold for $200 million. Very soon there will be a newspaper advert or a major government official will say, oh, we our young Nigerians have made us proud and things like that. When African governments claim young Africans who make success in spite of your retrogressive policies, then it's a big, of a shame scenario. So apart from exposure and knowledge that helps young people build, the third thing that we've seen as an opportunity through technology is that technology has allowed young people organize. Many people will look at the last 3 weeks and talk about how, people would use it to mobilize for protests and things like that. But I say, look above, look a little below that surface and look at how people mobilized resources. And this is not the first time it has happened. When people literally are looking for how to support their colleagues and things like that, the online platforms that are also under attack from many governments are the same platforms that have been used to fix the problems that, are left because of the gaps in government, because of government inefficiency.
Thank you very much, Benga. That was very insightful. I think we'll be wrapping up our panel now. I just want you to just say in 5 seconds, just 5 seconds, because we're starting the other panel right now. A major problem bedeviling the digital space right now is the issue of fake news. And the spread of fake news is a concern to governments across the globe. The Minister of Information recently said that we must kill fake news before it kills us, you know. And in 5 seconds, so that I can introduce the other panel, can you just tell me 2 strategies we can use to control the impact of fake news, so that we don't keep, we don't have more people talking about the negatives of the digital space, you know, and forgetting about its positives? How do we, in just 5 seconds, how do we deal with that issue?
3 things. Number 1, fake news is an expression of the anger and resentment in society. Even if you shut down the internet, you will hear it on the radio. Even if you shut down the radio, small circles of people. We used to have this thing called free readers club around newspapers when I was much younger, and that is where we discussed. It will continue to happen. When you realize that, number 1, you realize that the enemy is not the people using social media. The enemy is the fact that there is something people are trying to say.
But let me quickly go to Ethiopia. Let me see whether the situation is the same in Ethiopia, especially when you look at the African Youth Charter and the fact that that document is meant to serve as a framework for equal partnership. So Cisse, you've heard what Mr. Kamara said. Can you just provide some thoughts on how best we can address that withdrawal symptom and also that struggle for participation as we've seen across Africa? I would be more interested in you telling us, how can we form this equal partnership using your experience in Ethiopia? Cisse, over to you, please. And I'll ask that you please do this in 2 minutes because the session is already winding down and we want to seize the energy in the room. Cisse, please.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to participate in this important conference. I'm Sisai Tarraqain from Children and Youth Development Organization, which is development interventions. So as far as involvement of youth civil society organization in the ratification, in the implementation of the African Youth Charter, most of organization, honestly speaking, is not involved, and also the actual implementation of the African Youth Charter, I think, is not as such satisfactory. So, in fact, there are a lot of policies, strategies related to the young people in Ethiopia, but the actual implementation, when we see the actual implement policies, is very weak. So the documents are very much attractive. There are a lot of intervention which is important for young peoples, but when we see the actual implementation, especially in the grassroots level, it's not as much as is not as such well implemented. Even if some government officials, some government offices is not well aware about the policies, the strategies. So it needs intervention, it needs awareness creation interventions, and other engagement strategies.
Thank you very much, Cisse. I mean, I heard you loud and clear that implementation is unsatisfactory, and I think that's the trend we're seeing from Nigeria to Sierra Leone to Ethiopia. But I also want to tease out the fact that there are interventions by government in some of these countries. For instance, when Rotimi was talking, he mentioned a youth fund for young people in Nigeria. When Kamara also mentioned youth councils, the setting up of youth councils, and what's it called, and internships. All right. So we're having some level of activities from government, but from your perception or perspective, they are not satisfactory enough, especially not reaching the grassroots. And you've mentioned the need for awareness and engagement strategy. So let me go back to Sierra Leone, but this time I'll be talking with Ishmael. Ishmael, you heard all of this situation, that I'm picking this back into what our friend from Ethiopia said around awareness and an engagement strategy. What do you think we can do better in terms of raising awareness on the African Youth Charter? And how do you think we can engage people better, especially when you look at that document? Again, I emphasize that document is a political document and also a legal document. Can we hear your thoughts, Ishmael, for 2 minutes? And please, when you're speaking, can we also see your face? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I'm live. Thank you very much. I'm happy to participate in this conference, especially when it comes to issues surrounding young people. We are youth activists, and we hope that some of these things we are discussing, they get to hear. And the story is just the same when it comes to implementation of the youth charter. Is not there. All right, now look at. I want to start with the obligation. It states that the state parties should adopt such legislative and other measures to effect the provisions of the charter. But believe me, we've not seen any law or rule in my country that says that young people are not too young to rule. These things are not happening. The implementation is not there. In fact, how many of the young people in my country know about the African Youth Charter? This also is another problem. We have some of these platforms set aside, like my brother mentioned about the Youth Commission. In fact, I reached to that point. The Youth Commission is one body, but I tell you, the malfunctions are so much. Okay, I also want to look at the aspect of Article 4 of that same charter, which states that the freedom of expression. Something happened recently in my country. A young lawyer actually made mention about something which relates to the Supreme Court ruling against qualifications of lawyers, in the aspect of them handling certain position or offices in the country. What happened was that the Supreme Court ruled that to be arrested, and at the end of the day, his license to operate as a lawyer is going to be suspended. See, these things are all on paper. Nothing is happening. Okay, our government or African leaders actually implement what is in the African Youth Charter. Believe me, Africa will be a better place. Now, let me go to Article 11, which talks about youth participation. I tell you, young people are not allowed to participate. The space, the platform is not created for us. We are trying so much to create the platform, but I tell you, the government are not creating this platform for young people. Okay, none of it is that. If we really want to have a flood of power as young people to drive this change forward, but at the end of the day, the government are not providing the resources needed. Okay, and now we are talking about collaboration with, between the African Commission and youth organizations in Africa. I think for me, what I suggest is that I want us to note this down. Since African countries are paying money to to run the affairs of the African Union, what I suggest is the union needs to increase the amount of money these governments are paying. So at the end of the day, they in turn will partner directly with organizations in Africa. Because I think if the monies these countries are paying, and at the end of the day, this money are going to them again to run youth programs, but these programs are not being run. So I think for me, the monies should be increased, and at the end of the day, we should they should partner directly. There are so many platforms. Like for example, we could set up a network. Let's say Sierra Leone, all youth organizations are coming together. We have one network and we have a representative. We have this kind of body or committee that represents all youth organizations in Africa or in Sierra Leone. Likewise, in other countries. At the end of the day, this one or two representatives in each of these countries will form the Africa body, right, that will represent all youth organizations.
Very much, Ishmael. I hear you loud and clear on the need for us to have like a youth network where some of these things can go through. And, I must also say that we've heard all of these stories as to how young people are not being included. Can I play the devil's advocate? And I want to check whether Wango is online or whether Yolanda, Manuel is online. I'm trying to look for the two of them. I can't track them. If Manuel is online, I think Manuel is online. Manuel, we have the opportunity of the Federal Ministry of Youth joining our conference, and I'm so excited about that. I do also have the likes of Ambassador Keshi and Mrs. Dio Keshi. So let's do some intergenerational dialogue. Now let me play the devil's advocate and say, Manuel, if you're hearing me, Manuel is the Deputy Director of Angolan Youth Institute. I am, by the power not given today, making you African government. And because again, Nigeria is a good and big economy, I want you to advise, the federal ministries of youth. What do you think they should do differently? But my being a devil's advocate is now saying, all of the blame has gone to government. Is there anything young people should do differently? Manuel, do you want to tell us what exactly should we do differently as young people? If I can't see Manuel, I would escalate this to Rotimi and ask directly Rotimi, government. Is government only? Don't mind the fact that I look like a politician, but is government the sole problem? The issue of raising awareness, the issue of engaging, the issue of getting into that space. What role for young people? Rotimi, please.
Thank you very much. And I was smiling. You look like an honorable minister. So you are the government that we see right now, and we would be happy to say that. Yeah, I feel like, and I always say that yes, government has a major role to play, but we also have our own roles to play in whichever corner that we find ourselves in Nigeria, across the continent. My colleagues from Sierra Leone and other parts have spoken very well. One of the things that we have to play is that we all need to be active citizens. So my friends know me, I've been involved in activism, mobilizing young people from time immemorial. And when we have these conversations, they say, oh, there's this thing happening. You're not going to protest. I'm saying nobody is paid to protest in Nigeria. Well, I know some people are hired to protest once in a while, but we all need to be concerned about our society. If our society is going well, we all benefit. If the police is harassing people, we are all at a disadvantage. So we all need to be active citizens. The more we put pressures on our government, elected officials, and we also take advantage of what is in our environment, and we also monitor, we are helping government one way or the other when they get feedback from us. Some will democratize access for young people in Nigeria, and that's very important for us to build an egalitarian society. Thank you.
Thank you, Rotimi. I hear you so well on democratizing information and making sure information is open, especially within the context of the African Youth Charter being a framework for empowerment and equal partnership for Africa's development. And part of Africa's development is good education, infrastructure, electricity, good internet access, and what have you. Now, having said that, I'm closing down now, and I'll quickly go to Kamara. Kamara, this time around, I'll be strict with my minute because I want to round up in 3, 4, 5 minutes. Kamara, what's your last thoughts on today's conversation around how can we foster inclusive collaboration between African Union Commission, African Youth CSOs for an improved advocacy on the implementation of the AU Youth Charter? Your thoughts in 1 minute, please, Kamara. And can we see your video this time around?
Hello.
Hello. Yes. Good.
I think the African Union has to work collaboratively with civil societies, organizations across Africa to see how these the provisions in the Youth Charter can be implemented. And they should not just leave that task to the government alone, because many a time when it comes to collaboration between governments and civil society organizations, the government will be very, very selective in the choice of civil society organizations, preferring those who are singing their praise. So I think the African Union should not just leave that task of choosing civil society organizations, so the government, they have to ensure that everybody is involved so that these provisions contained in the charter will be communicated to the local population, because many people across Africa are not even aware about the existence of the African Youth Charter. So it is for the Union AU to collaborate with civil society organization. I think the young people also have a role to play in raising awareness, because many a time young people are not demanding for quality delivery, for quality service delivery, and so many other things. I don't know if time will permit me. I want to.
Yes, let's just hold it. I mean, we can always keep the conversation going after this, but I hear you so well on a multi-stakeholder process that includes the strand of civil society. And, we don't have to be selective. I hear you so well on that, and that's loud. Thank you very much, Rotimi Olawale. Thank you very much, Kamara Osman Bikal. Thank you, Sise Taregan, and thank you, Ishmael Roland Kamara, for sharing your thoughts with us today on this very panel that has looked at how we can foster an inclusive collaboration between the African Union Commission and African Youth CSOs for improved advocacy on the implementation of the AU Youth Charter. I'm sure all of your voices and the conversations we've had so far will go into a report that documents all that has happened today and that can form policy directions. And at this point, it's been a pleasure for me to be able to moderate this session. Many thanks to AfriGrowth Foundation for the opportunity to serve, and I'll now give this back to the moderator.
Thank you very much, Shay. I thank you for your input, especially covering up for me when technology took me out of the space. I'd also like to thank all the panelists as well. You've done justice to the topic, and I'm sure all our attendees have left this panel with a lot to take home. Like I've always said, Africa has never lacked policy documents or policy developers. Africa has always lacked the will, the political will, the legal will, if I would say, to implement some of these policies and bring them, to fruition. The ability for nation states to understand how important the development, the empowerment of its youthful population is highly critical to our evolution as a continent. I would like to thank everybody who has contributed thus far, all the panelists, all the attendees, the Honorable Minister of Youth and Sports, represented by the Honorable Pamsek, the AfriGrowth Foundation for putting this together. I'd like to thank you all and close with this. Everything rises and falls on leadership. There's nothing the youthful population of our continent would achieve if the leadership lacks the raw will and emotions to make sure that everything the African youth needs to be empowered with to be able to competitively position themselves in line with their contemporaries across the globe. If we don't have that, then all we have done here is just rhetoric. So I thank everybody once again, and I invite the president of the AfriGrowth Foundation to give her closing remarks and bring this wonderful event to a close. I'd like to invite you, madam. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Akpata. You have done wonderfully well. I must say that all the panelists, everybody has kind of, they've done so well that I am, being a woman, you know how emotional we can get sometimes. And I sit here and I feel very humbled. Humbled because I'm confident that with people like you and all those who have participated in this conference, against all odds, you've made it possible. And for that reason, I have a lot of hope and trust that this is, Africa is God's own continent, because we rest on the grace of God most of the time, and we make things happen. Things that look impossible becomes possible once it is connected in the continent. So with this, I would like to say thank you to everybody, but most importantly, I would just want to give you like a wrap up and resolutions that we are drawing away from this event today. If I do have the floor, Dr. Akpata, please let me know, but because you are still in charge until I formally take over from you. But I can only say thank you.
Thank you, madam. Yes, you do have the floor to deliver your closing remarks and bring this great event.
Based on all the proceedings and discourse, I just say we have all agreed that the African Youth Charter is indeed a veritable document which can effectively champion youth engagement, inclusive development and empowerment. The African Youth Charter is a unique instrument for the protection and safeguarding of the African youth because it takes into consideration African values and respect to youth development. The present COVID-19 has helped us to discover the advantage of digitalization. The digital media is a veritable space through which youth can effectively converge and forge alliances and engage key actors in government. Civil society organizations should equally invest more in programs that will improve the use of digital media for inclusive development and engagement. There should be increased synergy and partnership between civil society organizations and actors, as there is power in collaboration. Civil society organizations should serve as a bridge or fill a gap so that communications can flow back and forth between youths and other key stakeholders in government. They can do this by monitoring implementation of important and key programs which the government has put in place to empower youth. In this regard, effort should be made to include youth in the monitoring process. General mentoring and peer mentoring should be availed to youth at all levels. AfriGrowth Foundation, as a mentoring organization, we take mentoring very seriously. And indeed, I just say with all humility that we've mentored about 10,000 youths over a period of time we took on mentoring as youth empowerment. And we encourage other organizations, start the act and art of mentoring. That is one of the oldest forms of schooling in the world. If you go back to history, you will see that strong personalities were made by strong mentors. This we can imbibe with little or no cost, even in Nigeria. In addition, civil society and the private sector should also partner with civil societies, empowerment, and even what are called for-profit entities, and make sure that there's a synergy, a constant synergy that continues between all these groups, because the youth has their own role to play in this process. Firstly, I believe youth should strive to be more informed in key policies and play a role in impacting such policies. Civil society organizations should create more awareness and publicity to youth in their database on key local and international policies, such as the African Youth Charter and other important policies. The time is imminent for regional bodies such as ECOWAS to partner with civil society and organizations to champion the process of implementation of implementing the Africa Youth Charter. The African Union and the Office of the Youth Envoy has come up with credible plans, such as the current Action Plan for Africa Youth Empowerment 2019 to 2023. Now, civil society organizations should key into these plans and map out ways that can complement the effort of the African Union, specifically in advocating for better implementation of the Youth Charter. These are, along with the many thoughts expressed in this event today should more than be enough for us to move forward as we should, with purpose and clarity. There should be no debates anymore, and we shouldn't each try to do it differently. We're all speaking the same language. We're all pushing towards the same. So I strongly believe that even after this particular gathering, we will do everything within our power, together with some of our very key stakeholders who cooperate with us, to move this discussion not only forward as a discussion, but as a strong implementation strategy. And with that, I say thank you very much. I thank you all for taking so much time out of your busy schedule these days. But I also want to assure us all that one thing we cannot afford to do is for our generation not to positively and aggressively invest in the growth of our youth. Therein lies the power of a nation, that a group of youths can come together and say to us, you know, after your last meeting, guess what? The youths are taking on the next meeting, and these are the topics to be discussed, and these will be the action plan we've taken since that meeting that we would like to discuss at this new one. For me, I would say to you all, the truth of the matter is that Nigerian youths have traveled around the world to the glory of God. Nigerian youths are very versatile. I mean, if you see what they come up with, I feel proud, you know, to say I'm a Nigerian and all these youths are children. With that, I say thank you very much. May God bless us all. And I thank every single one of you who have contributed today. I haven't paid you a dime, but you know in my heart that I appreciate each and every one of you. And I beg of you, do not let this conversation end here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Thank you, all our distinguished speakers, our distinguished guests, our distinguished attendees. We look forward to having you at the next Illuminate Africa Youth Conference, where we'll be delving deeper into some of the things we've discussed today and assessing how far we've gone as regards implementing these strategies, just like the President has just mentioned. I thank you all, and I wish you a fantastic day ahead. Have a great day. Bye-bye.